It is 2025, and I'll tell you right now, this 42-year-old from Texas, Shamsu Sinzabar, the guy who killed at least 15 Americans last night in the wonderful city of New Orleans, did not win, and he will never win. But I do want to know, and I think the families who lost somebody last night deserve to know what the FBI knew before this happened down in New Orleans. How much did the FBI know? And while we're at it, how much did the FBI know about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania? How much did the FBI know about Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas, Texas? How much did the FBI know before anything terrible happens in this country? It always seems like they knew something. Here's what we know right now. At approximately 3:17 a.m. on Bourbon Street, one of the most beautiful parts of the Crescent City, a premeditated act of terrorism took place. The man responsible, 42-year-old Shamsu Sinzabar. He had an ISIS flag on the back of his truck and made a right-hand turn onto Bourbon from Canal Street, immediately accelerated, and tried to kill as many people as possible. I can also confirm Shamsu Sinzabar is in hell tonight and will be there for eternity. There will not be 72 virgins lined up waiting for Shamsu, who just became the latest example of Islamic terrorism in this country. Because it is a fact that when you rent a Ford F-150 pickup truck and put an ISIS flag on the back of it and kill innocent people, you are by the very definition an Islamic terrorist. A description that Kamala Harris, if she was elected in November, wanted to eliminate from the English language altogether 20 years after 9/11. And Kamala thought the phrase Islamic terrorism was hurting people's feelings.
You must have the courage to object when they use that term, radical Islamic terrorism, which ignores how Muslims have overwhelmingly been the greatest victims of terror.
Kamala, from the very depths of my soul, I am just so darn glad that you didn't win in November. And guess what? It is okay to hurt people's feelings. That's often how people grow. It's okay to call COVID-19 the China virus because COVID-19 came from China, just like German measles came from Germany. It's also okay to call an Islamic terrorist an Islamic terrorist. The Boston Marathon bombers were not heroes or heartthrobs. They were Islamic terrorists. Osama bin Laden was an Islamic terrorist, and Shamsu Sinzabar is an Islamic terrorist. But right now, less than 24 hours after this all happened, the question remains, how did he become radicalized? And how did this failed real estate agent from Houston, Texas, become radicalized enough to do something like this? And how did the FBI miss this? Because Sinzabar, also a 10-year Army veteran, at one point, not that long ago, seemed like a pretty square guy, ordinary in fact, like maybe somebody you'd consider buying a house from. Take a look.
I'm Shamsuddin Jabbar, property manager with Blue Meadow Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career as a real estate agent, where I feel like what really sets me apart from other agents is my ability to be able to, one, be a fierce negotiator. So not only do I brilliantly market your property to make sure it gets sold as quickly as possible or gets leased as quickly as possible, but I'm also going to take every ounce of energy and putting it into negotiating for you and for your property to get the best deal that you can possibly get for it.
So that is Shamsu, not that long ago. That video was shot in 2020. And in the days and weeks ahead, I hope we get the answers that we need. I do, but my faith in the three-letter organizations running these investigations right now, extremely limited. And I say that because the FBI has stonewalled the American people and Donald Trump himself for the last 6 months. We still know very little, next to nothing, about Thomas Matthew Crooks, the 20-year-old that tried to kill Donald Trump in July. And when you shield information from the public, guess what? You allow conspiracy theories to grow. And the same FBI that hasn't been transparent with the public about what really happened in Butler wasn't even calling this an act of terrorism until almost 10 hours after it happened. And we know that because an FBI agent with a nose ring told the world this morning that this was not a terrorist event. Take a look.
We'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne.
Clearly, this was an act of terrorism. Let me take you through it. When someone with a name like Shamsu Sinzabar drives a truck with a large ISIS flag on the back of it into a crowd of innocent people with the sole purpose of killing as many people as possible, that is terrorism. That is not profiling, that's honesty. That should have been the first thing investigators established when they arrived on the scene at 3:18 this morning in the French Quarter. By 4 a.m. New Orleans time this morning, it should have been clear to the world that this was an act of terrorism. The other part of this story, like so many that we have witnessed over the last 4 years, is this is yet another Joe Biden story. We are currently living in a country where laws are now optional. The pickup truck that Shamsu Sinzabar used was rented, and somehow that truck crossed the border in Eagle Pass, Texas last month. We don't know why yet, but I can promise you that when you rent a truck in Houston, Texas, you can't drop it off in Guadalajara, Mexico. Donald Trump said today that the Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. And the president is right. New Orleans is an amazing place. My wife is from New Orleans. Her parents are there now. I talked to my father-in-law today. After Hurricane Katrina, they stuck a bumper sticker on the back of their Jeep. It's still there. It reads, "New Orleans, proud to swim home." The French Quarter will come back. New Orleans will come back. The Sugar Bowl will happen tomorrow and Georgia will win. Mardi Gras next month. The Jazz Fest happens in May. New Orleans will come back. But once again, I find myself asking a question that I've asked on countless occasions. How did the FBI, how did Christopher Wray's FBI miss this again? Because right now, it looks a lot to me like Kash Patel is not going to need those confirmation hearings after all. He was just confirmed. The incompetence of the FBI and every three-letter organization that somehow missed the radicalization of this seemingly once normal Army vet is sadly not surprising at all.